Hello, this is wmpyr. Recently I got an email from someone that basically asked me to give them some advice as far as choosing styles, martial arts styles. So in this video I thought I'd give some pointers. So one of the things that I like to frequently go to is the general idea in which the Chinese martial arts people kind of go through their martial arts training. Now, this concept can be applied to just about any background and any martial arts style that you're seeking. So it doesn't have to be limited to Chinese styles, but I like their way of thinking. So and this is just a general idea, okay? It's to help you formulate your own ideas. So don't think that this is the way it has to be and this is the only way. This is a good base to work off of. So the first one is basically it's divided into three phases. The first phase is, let's say, something like you start off in a style like wushu, where yes, it is acrobatic. You're going to be working on agility, flexibility, and then there's a lot of forms. All right, so you're going to be doing forms, learning empty hand stuff, and then you're also going to be doing weapons. To me, the age group, a good age to start in is like, let's say 14, 15 years old. This is perfect for you. The amount of energy you have at that age, this should work well for you. And of course, that depends on the kids. Some kids are more energetic than others. Some are more athletic than others. And who knows? You might be obese, or you might be very sickly. In my case, I was very sickly and weak around that age. So it just depends on the individual, of course. And if you've been a couch potato all your life, then you're not going to want something hardcore. All right, that's just going to discourage you. You'll probably get injured. All right, so you're going to want something easier and stuff like that. That may not necessarily be style either. That also might depend on the school and the practitioners and the instructor. Are they laid back? Are they hardcore? All about like, no, this stuff is for the street, and I grew up in the rough streets, so I train people hardcore. So that just depends. But anyway, generally speaking, a style like wushu, where you're going to be working on stuff. I remember a friend of the family is a Chinese restaurant owner, and this guy was telling me that when at a young age, when he was learning kung fu, one of the things that he did when he was a lot younger was they would be a group of practitioner students form a circle, and I think he said there was like 18 different weapons they had to know, and let's say they start off with like the weapons are displayed down in a circle, so you go to one weapon and it's like the broadsword, let's say. So you pick up the broadsword, you're doing the form of the broadsword, and then after you do the form, you do the calisthenics, like push-ups, sit-ups, and all that stuff, squats and stuff. And then immediately you move to the next weapon. So that might be a spear. So you do the entire form for the spear, and then you do the push-ups, the sit-ups, all the calisthenics, and then the next weapon. So 18 different weapons, they would just go immediately with no rest, one after the other. That's the kind of conditioning that we're looking for, to toughen up the body, but still working on agility, still learning the forms and stuff like that. So that, he said, by the end of the class, he was just drenched in sweat, the conditioning, the cardio, that it was great exercise, and made him give a lot of respect to kung fu. So that's a good thing, attitude-wise too. So let's say you do that, 14, 15 years old is a good place, and let's say about 4 years, all right? The next level, phase 2, is now that you learned all that, and now that you're conditioned and stuff, is to take the training to the next level, where it's even harder conditioning, and now it's like you're going for a purpose. The purpose is sparring and also competing. So now we're looking at something like pretty much any combat sport. So boxing, kickboxing, sanda, MMA, jiu-jitsu, sport jiu-jitsu, wrestling. I mean, sambo, it just goes on and on and on. But there's all kinds of different competitions available, all right? And even something like point sparring, which a lot of people don't like to give respect to, is valuable, and it is a combat sport. So you have to be in shape for that. You have to, it's a specific game that you have to develop. All right, so it's not easy. It really isn't. Even point sparring, it's not easy. You got to give it respect. Even if you feel that it's totally unrealistic, it's still a sport. Any sport is hard to be successful at. You're competing against other human beings that are trained. It's not easy. It's rough. The competition itself is rough. So, you know, and it depends how long you stay in this phase. Some people, usually, I would say combat sports, competing, not very long. Fighters and stuff. It's a young man's sport. That's what they say, right? So usually not very long. For me, me personally, I spent a long time here, probably longer than I should have. But the good thing was my competition level experience, my competition level amount was very, very small. So even though I spent a lot of time in combat sports, the actual competing was very small. There was a lot of sparring, so that definitely took a toll on the body, which actually takes us to phase 3. Now that you've competed, now that you've got the battle experience, all right, and you've been, this means that you went through phase 1 and phase 2, which just the amount of training that you've been putting in, the amount of stress, the amount of conditioning, all that you've put onto your body. By this time, you're going to have injuries, for sure. You should. It's normal. You should have injuries, and if not, you should definitely have micro injuries, you know. So maybe not necessarily like a broken arm or a broken nose, but you might have smaller injuries, you know, that if you went to the doctor, they would say, you're not injured, you're fine, but you might be a little tight on the shoulder. One side may be a little higher than the other, or, you know, and this is from your training, from your competing, from all the just a lot of the brutal stuff that you've been doing, the abuse that you put yourself to because you wanted to do the splits, or because you wanted to learn a backflip, or you're trying to get that high kick, you know, or whatever it was in your training, previous phase 1 and phase 2, you know. So from this point, what you're trying to do is heal that, and also you're trying to train smarter, you know, because now you're also getting older and stuff. So with your experience, and now you could, with also now that you're older, more mature, you have more patience, and you can now really examine yourself. First of all, to heal the injuries, you have to know every little part of your body and be able to examine it, you know. So then styles like Tai Chi, to me, yoga, it depends on how you practice it, but to me, yoga can also definitely be a martial art, and how you practice it, or it's at least a part of martial arts. So, you know, stuff like that, Aikido is to me very, very good. And by this time, it should be very clear to you how you're going to fight and stuff like that. So there's no mystery. For a lot of people going into styles like this, like Tai Chi and yoga and stuff like that, is mysterious, and it's confusing, and they don't like it. They don't because they're like, I don't know what combat is, and those styles, they don't really necessarily make it clear. So it's very mystical and stuff like that. But remember, if you practice those styles as phase 3, that means you already have competition experience, full contact sparring experience. So you should already have some sort of an idea of actual combat. So by this time, you don't really need to focus on that, because you already know what it takes to be successful, at least a little bit, in those kinds of against a full contact, fully resisting opponent. So you already understand that. Hopefully you could focus more on examining yourself and healing yourself, and examining techniques that you've learned along the way into a more finer detail, you know, body mechanics and stuff like that. So hopefully you could go into that area, you know, rather than still be obsessed with combat. If you're still obsessed with combat, then you should probably not be in phase 3. Go back to phase 2 and keep doing that, you know. So and if you are in phase 2 and you're constantly struggling with your physical conditioning, then you probably need to go back to phase 1. Instead of competing, you just need to work on discipline and the things that you should have learned in phase 1. You know what I mean? So to me, those different 3 phases kind of really help with where you should focus on and stuff like that. So you know, that to me is a very nice place to start. It doesn't have to be that way. For example, there are plenty of exceptions. Like what I didn't include is there are some other people like myself who basically I enjoy various styles of martial arts. So for me, learning different styles was a phase that I went through. That was very important to me. So there was a phase where it was like, I don't care about conditioning, agility, and things like that so much, and I don't really care about competing, which is phase 2, and application, you know, and then phase 3, which was really focusing more on deeper specific areas like maybe just breathing or just stances and stuff like that. None of that. I was just focused on learning and experiencing as many different styles as possible, and that could be included in between, like let's say phase 1 and phase 2. And also there are plenty of people that, let's say, they practice Tai Chi in phase 1. So at 14, 15 years old, maybe, you know, the dad is teaching it to the kid. He's like, I want you to learn this right now, you know, because I think it'll help you out later or whatever. And maybe perhaps that kind of experience can help the kid avoid some injuries going through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. You know, so they're learning Tai Chi like way before phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, you know? So they might be doing that. Or they might just completely not go into phase 2 and phase 3 and just only do Tai Chi for a completely different reason, you know? There's all kinds of different people out there, all kinds of different approaches. Or there might be somebody out there that is doing Tai Chi, which is normally done as phase 3, as phase 2. Basically competing, there's really, from my understanding, I don't think there really is a Tai Chi tournament that you can go to where you're competing full contact, fighting against another Tai Chi practitioner. But maybe that's what this person is doing. They're practicing Tai Chi for combat. So maybe they want to fight against other styles. Maybe they're trying to make it work in MMA or something like that. They might be one of those rare people that are doing that, where they're just focused on Tai Chi, and they're like maybe part of the SWAT team on the police, so they're actually using it, you know, against drug dealers and stuff like that. Who knows? There's so many different approaches out there, so many different people out there. So, and there could also be somebody that is training in something like Wushu, but instead of doing Wushu like the way you're doing it in phase 1 where you're 14 or 15, maybe this person is in their 50s and they're practicing Wushu and they're really honing their skills, just focusing on the skills, not so much on the conditioning, you know, not so much on the other aspects, but really on the skill development, and they're really fine-tuning their body mechanics and stuff, and really working on honing and sharpening that, you know. So then they're practicing Wushu, which is normally practiced in the phase 1, as a phase 3 martial art, you know. So that all depends. There might be a person, once again, in their 50s and 60s still practicing MMA, but like they're gonna have to be doing it like as a phase 3 type thing, you know. So maybe they're more focused on the grappling and the submissions and stuff. You know, it just depends on the individual. So anyway, those are just some pointers. Thank you for listening, and take care, folks.